All right, guys, so we're going to take a look at the system on everything that I basically bought. We've got the Corsair. This was my RAM, DDR5, two 16 gigabyte sticks for a total of 32 gigabytes, running at 6,000 megahertz on that. Then we've got here, this one here is the Critical T700 Pro. I have 2 terabytes on that with a 1,204 I think megabytes per second or whatever it is. This was going to be OS only. I was going to use this terabyte just for my OS. Then over here, we've got Critical P3 Plus, and this was going to be SSD, 4 terabytes on this one here. I think a speed of 4,800. This one here was going to be for storage. The really fast one was going to be for OS, and then there is my RAM. For the CPU, I went with the AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D. As for motherboard, we went with the Riptide B650E, which is also houses an AMD chip here. And the cooling for the CPU, we've got the Arca Liquid Freeze 3 280 black. This is the non-RGB version. Power was the BeQuiet Pure Power 12M, 1200 watts. And then of course, what everybody wants to know, we went with the GPU. We went with a Zotac Gaming Trinity Black Edition GeForce RTX 4080 Super, 16 gigabytes on this one here. And that's all being housed inside of Corsair 4000D Airflow mid-tower PC case. Next was going to be building the PC here. Now, one thing first, my laptop had died and I was going to purchase another laptop basically. And I reached out and just told my community, guys, my system is down, so things are going to be a little slow for at the moment. There were a couple of guys in my community who absolutely helped me out. They were key to me getting what parts I needed to get everything rolling and to really help me out. They also suggested that maybe I should also ask Octane to help me. I filled out an application to apply for a grant from OTOY. I got lucky and I basically got approved for that. So that gave me the money and the means to put this system together. Once I got qualified for the grant, I was immediately thinking, let's get another laptop. A couple of these guys in the community, they were key players and like, dude, you should just build a PC. And I'm like, oh, I don't know how to build a PC. Literally, the last time I ever attempted to build a PC, there was no YouTube. It was that long ago, right? They convinced me and I jumped on board. They helped me get everything out. For those of you who are thinking about doing something like this, I would say go to this website right here, PC Builder. Absolutely game changer. Literally, you choose your parts that you want and it will tell you if they're compatible or if they're not going to work. It will help you literally piece each piece together, build it from motherboard up. And again, compatibility, it will let you know what works and what doesn't work with it. It's absolutely fantastic. But this is where we started. They sent me a link from PC Builder, and then from there we worked off of, swap them in things that we're interested in, things that I was interested in. We got that go. So first thing first, PC Builder, check this site out if you're interested in building your own PC. So then after that, while I was waiting for parts to arrive, because I live in Japan, a lot of my stuff had to be shipped from America because one, the US dollar is extremely expensive right now. Trying to buy a PC of this level in Japan, it was probably going to cost me almost $5,000 or $6,000 because of the dollar rate, right? And some parts I couldn't even get in Japan, like this GPU, I couldn't even order 4080 Super. I couldn't even order it in Japan. Like it wasn't available. I went to Amazon US and brought a lot of parts over because I knew I trusted Amazon shipping. Looking at the box on my cooler, I don't know why, but anyways, I did that. While I was waiting, I literally was studying. It was almost about 2.5 weeks, almost maybe 3 weeks before I got all the parts together. And that whole time, all I did was study on how to build a PC. And the 2 videos that were key for me that really helped me get comfortable and make me believe that I can do it. This video here, this Linus Tech video, how to build a PC in 2024. I watched this thing maybe 5 or 6 times, right? And then from there, I would also watch, there was a couple of other like video channels that they do live streaming while they're building them. So I would jump in and out of those, But this one I really studied a lot. And then the second one that was really key for me was this one right here, how to build a PC, full detailed build guide 2024. This was absolutely fantastic because he literally goes step by step, plug this cable into this, plug this into this. The Linus Tech guys are kind of more of like a broader things you should know, things you should buy, things you shouldn't do, the FYI. Between the two, I had a good picture of what I needed to do. And then also watching live streamers build PCs, like literally just get immersed in the world of building a PC. Just search on YouTube. YouTube helped me out tremendously, okay? So once I did that, the parts came in, and once the parts started coming in, I would literally go to each site's parts. For example, I would go to Arctic Freeze's YouTube channel and watch the instruction guide on how to install it. I would go to the Motherboard's website or YouTube and watch videos. I will search people who are installing this particular motherboard, how to install an AMD chip, my one, searching on YouTube for each individual part so I can find out what it takes to actually install that one part, plus the PC build. And I'm glad I did that because literally on the Arca water cooler system, one issue that I watched, a lot of people said installation was a real big pain. Like the screws weren't lining up when they were trying to get in, and it was just making a mess. And then the thermal paste was being spread everywhere. It was a big deal. So I'm glad I studied that because a couple of sites that I found, they were showing alternative ways to install it by putting the brackets onto the actual head first and then taking that whole bracket and then screwed it into the motherboard, which saved a lot of headache. And I practiced before I started, you know, once the parts got here, I would do what I call a dry run, because it's something that we used to do in the theater. We would basically do a dry tech run and go step by step, you know, show by show, part by part, you know, preset lighting setups, this, that, and that. I did that with each part. I'm like, okay, this part is going to go on here and it's going to screw in. Oh yeah, this is really hard to screw in. This chip's going to go here. This is going to go there. And that was what I did. I kind of did like a dry rehearsal. So I felt really confident once it came to doing the actual build. Let's get into the build. All right, guys, so we're getting into the build here. This part, again, like I said, is extremely crucial. Now, when you see I have this plastic cover, see my chips here, my pins are actually in the motherboard. In this particular model, the pins here, you do not want to bend these pins. If you bend these pins, it is game over. This motherboard was basically trash, okay? Take your time. The AMD chip has a little triangle angle cut right here, and these little grooves, it only fits in one way. It only fits in one way. Just be gentle. It literally just drops right into place and it's good to go. Once you do that, this black plastic cover is going to pop off. See, the chip is in. I just gave it a little snug, make sure it's sitting nice and firm. We close the cap, we pull this little lever, and it takes a little bit of pressure to push this down. Okay. Now, I was a little bit nervous at this part because all the videos that I watched, when they closed that door, that little black cap literally would just pop off. Mine didn't. It just kind of like the top came off, but I literally had to like tug it for it to come out. So I was a little bit cold and I had the butterflies in my stomach at this point because I was like, oh no, like it didn't pop off like all the other videos I've seen. This is what it looks like. It only goes in one way. So I took it out one more time just to make sure that it was okay, because like I said, it didn't pop out. And after taking it back out, everything was fine. So again, I just reseated it in there, just put it back, and you can clearly, let me stop it right here. You see this little cutout? It only goes in one way, guys. You really can't mess this up. The only way you can mess this up is by rushing. Take your time. So boom, that was mission critical over, okay? That part was the hardest. From here, I went to install my SSD. So this is going to be this is the T700 here. This is going to be my fastest drive. Now, one mistake I did do, actually, no, not in this case, I didn't make a mistake. You do need to make sure on your motherboard, these SSD slots, I have 1, 2, 3, there's 2 more down here. One of them will be able to run at a faster speed than the others. So you'll look in your motherboard manual and figure out which one is the quickest. For me, it was this one right here. It was closest to the CPU, and that one was the quickest. So you put your fastest SSD in that fastest reader. So that's what I did here. Again, it's very easy to install this. You put it in at an angle, and then you have these little tiny screws that you have to use to screw this down. Now, mine came with the screw in the memory box, and I first used that one, and for some reason it didn't screw it all the way snug. So you can see here, like I'm screwing it and it's getting tight, but it's not going all the way flush. So another thing I learned, when you're tightening things, you should never have to really brute force tighten it. Like when you're working on a car or something, it's not like that. Just make sure it's firm. So what I did was I went back to the actual cover, which this cover actually is built for this because it has an installation underneath it. There was a peel, I had to peel it off, and it's a heat sink or some type to do the heat. So I used a screw from this and it worked perfectly fine. So if yours has a heat shield on it, don't worry about the hardware that comes with your memory. Just use the hardware that came with your motherboard. So after I put the heatsink on, make sure you peeled off that plastic from underneath there, and everything was good to go. And you can see me here double checking because there's a little cutout on the back edge that makes sure it sits in there nice and flush, so make sure you're screwing down into the actual memory chip or the SSD. So here's my second ones. Here's my two other ones. Again, I needed to make sure I made a mistake when I made. These are also, I guess, speed rated again. Like if you're going to only use one, you should put it on one certain side. Look at your manual to make sure you're doing it in the proper situation or in the proper position. For me, I had put it right here, but it should have been on this side. So I ended up going back and having to redo that here. And again, I'm just testing stuff. Like I already rehearsed it, but again, things only go in one way. You can see the cutout here. It only goes in one way. Nothing should be forced. Goes in at an angle, just slides right on in. That's what she said, right? And then boom, I used the screw here. I think I did use the actual screw that came with the SSD in this case. I have big hands, and this is not the great job for people who have big hands. And this is where I would say if you had a magnetic tip screwdriver, it will really help out here. Again, when you're tightening stuff down, firm. Doesn't have to be super tight, just make sure it's firm. Here is the peels that you have to use to make sure you peel that off for the installation and the heat sink, okay? Now, I also kept that seal because I put it on the wrong side, so I put that seal back on and took off the other one. So keep all this stuff until we're completely done. Have everything nice and tidy. I put everything back in their original boxes and keep things nice and organized. So again, tighten it up, nothing too firm. Now, this is the water cooler. This part was probably the second hardest thing that I had to deal with. This is before I actually watched the video. Let me pause it really quickly. This right here is where we're going to screw these two brackets in, which we're going to show you right now. But first we got to put in this like another plug basically. Again, every plug, they only go in one way. Some will click, some will just like seat in. Make sure that everything is all the way in and snug. Make sure nothing's halfway in because then you'll have issues, okay? And be gentle when you're pulling these cables, okay? You don't want to pull them out of the housing and then you're gonna have some serious issues. So after I've got this prepped, I've always kept my labels on. I do not pull anything off until right to that moment of installation. Now, these two brackets is what I was going to have to connect my cooler to. They were gonna have to go into these two holes. So this portion of the video, I did what it said in the manual and what I watched on the YouTube video from their channel. We're gonna plug these into the motherboard first. Here's the screws that it comes with. Again, we're removing the motherboard stock stuff. And again, make sure you have the proper tools. This screwdriver was too small and I wasn't getting any leverage, so I used the normal screwdriver. So you're gonna have like a normal screwdriver and a small screwdriver will probably help. I take this portion off, and now I'm going to put the mount for the water cooler to go on. And this was a pain. And just like it said when I watched many reviews about it, it was a pain to do it this way. Right now, we're supposed to put the brackets onto the motherboard, which I'm doing here. And again, when you tighten things up, you want to alternate. It's best to alternate. You never want to torque things down all on one side because that's putting uneven pressure on things. Just practice going alternate pattern, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. It just helps to ensure that we don't crank too hard on one side and break the motherboard or crack anything like that. Okay, so once you have this mounted, I tell you, the way they do it on the YouTube channel, their installation video was not the case. It was totally different. Next, I'm going to do is install the memory. Again, the memory only, or the RAM, it only goes in one way. Wait for that click once you push it. 2 clicks. I had 2 clicks on this. Again, make sure it's in snug. 2 clicks on mine. You got to listen for the click that you know that it's in there nice and snug. Now here I went to, let me pause it for a second. Here I'm putting on the thermal paste. onto my CPU because this is probably day 3. This is about a 3-day span. Okay, I did a dry run again, trying to displace parts, and the second one was again studying up problem issues that people were having installing certain parts. This is day 3, really doing it, putting the paste on top of the water cooler on top of the CPU here. And again, what I did was I actually didn't like, what is this consistency of this paste? So I took a little bit of paste and just put it on a piece of cardboard, and just to feel like, oh, okay, it's really sticky, like just so I know I wasn't shell shocked when I pulled it and put it actual on the CPU. Just again, practicing. So I knew the consistency, I knew how sticky it was. So I did that. I watched a whole bunch of videos on how to apply thermal paste, the X, the line, the 3 dots, the dot in the center. For me, I chose the spread because that was one that I kind of felt that it made sense. And on my particular motherboard, there was an issue where people were like, well, do you spread it all the way out to the edges? And some people said don't, because it just gets over, it gets a mess. And then sometimes if it gets hot, it's dripping, we don't know. So I put some here and then I spread it evenly here with the card. I've seen so many people do it on YouTube this way. So that was the way that I went to do it. Don't want to put too much, but you don't want to put not enough, right? Make sure I had a good even spread on there. Then what I did was, once I had it spread very evenly on the board, take your time because this stuff is sticky and you don't want to get it all over any components, right? And what I did was I put just a little bit, half of what everybody recommended. They say about the size of a pea. I put the size of a little dot just to cover myself one more time once I put this on here, because I didn't want to have enough. Okay, peeled my seal, and this is where I was trying to install it like they did on the manual. You can see, oh, actually, no, this is day 3. I changed it. Now you can see the brackets are actually mounted to the water cooler instead. And then I mount the brackets to the motherboard. It was a breeze this way, because when I tried to do it the first way, dry run, I couldn't get it. I could not screw it in. It wouldn't, the screws are not like biting on it enough. This way, I did it in one try. It was so much easier. So research your parts that you're going to be installing before to make sure if anybody's having issues or better workarounds. And this workaround saved my butt. It was so easy. Screwing things, when you're tightening them up, alternate things. Don't just screw one all the way down. Screw one here, screw a little there, screw a little here. I did that. Making sure none of my cables are being, clamped, or make sure none of my cables are being pinched or anything. Making sure everything is nice and clean and I'm having a good, nice, clean contact with the CPU. Dropping the fan on top. And then I was gonna pull the seal off, but I'm gonna wait and pull the seals off once the whole rig is done and completed. That's going to be like the reward. Now I'm just going ahead, plugging in my CPU cooler headers, plugging in everything where they need to go. I knew exactly where they needed to go because I watched the Arca videos on how to install that. So I knew exactly here's my VRM. I knew where it went. Next, I was seating in the GPU, trying to get this. And actually, I'm building the whole PC right now outside of the case. Literally, I'm just doing, I guess, something I learned from the Linus tech tip. To build the bare components, you need power, GPU, motherboard, CPU, cooler. And then we're gonna power it up and test it to make sure everything's running and properly before we put it in the case, because it's really a pain to work inside the case. And I was a little sketchy about doing this, but I did it outside of the box first, right? Both videos that I watched, they both suggested building it outside of the case first and doing dry startup, and then we'll do it. So here I'm connecting stuff into the power supply. Super easy. One cable fits one socket. Everything goes in. Now this, I did have an issue with this cable right here. And later on, I'm so glad, let me pause it. I am so glad right now I was struggling to get this cable into the header where it's supposed to go, because the cable, it can separate into a smaller cable because some motherboards won't need all that power, but mine needed both. And like I plugged one in and I plugged the second one in, but this second one would not fit in. So what I had to do is take it out, and there's a little tiny clip that allows me to clip them together and they act as one, and then I can slide them in. It was a pain to get this to fit in outside of the case. So when I got to putting it inside of the case, it was even harder. Like trying to get my 2 fingers, because the spacing between the radiator, oh, what happened to the camera? Sorry about that. The spacing between the radiator and the actual case was only big enough for me to put my 2 fingers in. It was about this big. It was like, and it was a pain, but I'm glad I knew how hard it was going to be, because it was already a pain doing it here outside of the case. And you can see here that cable is solo. It would not go in solo. it had to be connected to the adjacent connect, and then boom, I was able to get them in. So next, these are the two headers for the CPU, and then I plugged those into the motherboard, and then all of these stuff, they only fit in one way. And then was the moment of truth. I turned everything on, and this, I flipped the power on, and that lit up. Let me pause it for a moment here. Once I had the power supply and I had that on, and I turned it on, I just kind of paused for a moment. That light was on, and I wanted to make sure nothing started smoking, or if I didn't smell that metal, you know, that metal smell, or like when sulfur or something's burning. I just waited for a moment, like about 10-15 seconds, and I'm like, okay, I think everything's fine. So then here we do a jump start with this 2 screwdrivers. And this, I remember back in the day when I first built my other people, my buddy did this too. He did this whole build it outside of the case too. He was old school. I was like, all right, I remember this part. I remember tabbing those 2 jumpers, and it actually starts the PC. Boom. She's alive. It's alive. From here, the point of what I was doing this was to, I guess, to make sure everything was connected. And you needed to have it connected to a monitor. Once you had it connected to the monitor, it was just motherboard. Like, this is the BIOS, and the BIOS fired right up. Some motherboards, the BIOS may actually connect. Mine is Wi-Fi, so some of them will actually auto update, but mine didn't auto update. But it did reboot, I think one time. It rebooted by itself, and then it came back to the BIOS screen, and then that was it. And after it just set up the BIOS screen, I immediately went to go check the temperatures. Here, I was just checking the temperatures to see if the CPU temperature was holding, or was it erratic, or was it going up or down? And it was holding at 45F or 45C or whatever, but it's consistent, 45, 46, 45, 45, 46, 45. It hovered there. It wasn't like 80 or nothing, because if it was up, then I knew I had an issue with thermal paste, or something wasn't right with the water cooler. So that right there kind of saved me, to make me feel a lot more comfortable that I knew that the CPU was working properly, cooling was happening. It was actually being cooled. So that was all good and to go. The next day, I came back, actually 4th day, sorry, and I was gonna put it into the case. So here, what we needed to do is, on your case, there's gonna be the USB, and there's gonna be all these buttons that are on your actual PC. You're gonna need to connect those, and that's when I'm showing all of these wires come attached to your case. So we need to connect those in. All the system that I had built dry, all I had to do was just put that back into the case, reconnect those same ones, and add these few new ones. There was like maybe 6 or 7 of these little guys that I had to hook up. Audio, USB, USB-C, the power switch, whatever external USB ports you might have on there. That was what I did here, and it was fairly easy. This USB cable only goes in one way. Again, it's a little bit of a firm push, but you want to get that in there. And then I had this here, another USB Type-C plug in. The audio, I had the plugged in. I got the audio plugged in, and then these 2 right here, power LED power. I guess that was for the actual LED light on my power button. So I had to plug that in. Your manual will have exactly, here is the power reset button. Motherboard instructions will have exactly where all of these connectors need to go, the wording, the labeling. It was really easy. Mainly during the whole time during the build, the motherboard manual was always at hand. Like, I was always referring to that, find out what I needed. After I got the radiator installed, once you saw that whole build, I had to tear everything back down. Even taking off the cooler off of the CPU. And that was cool, because I didn't record that day. I should have, but that day gave me a good insight of how the spread went on my thermal paste, and the whole thing was fairly covered evenly. When I went to rebuild it, I just put that small little pea top drop, again, tiny, not even the size of a pea, just half of the size of a pea, just again to cover myself. Put that back on, mounted the radiator up here. This radiator, and now the motherboard is sitting in, that power connect is sitting behind the radiator, which was a pain to get to, guys. So I knew how hard it was to get to that before. Cable management, running these cables through this slot here. Basically, from the backside, we take all of our cables, they come back from out of here, and then we start plugging them into where everything goes back into. And this is where we get into cable management and trying to manage your cables. See, everything comes out from the back, and then my power supply is going to be down right here in the bottom. Behind here is the motherboard CPU power. That's where I had to get. After that, all I did was connect my drive. Now this is another issue. Let's back up really quickly here. You're going to need to have a way of getting Windows onto your machine. So what I did was on one of my older laptops, I made a Windows boot drive. It's very easy. It's free to do. You just search on YouTube how to set up a Windows boot drive. I did that, and that's going to allow you to plug that USB in, fire up the PC, and it's gonna know, boom, and it's gonna immediately start the installation process for Windows. So we're gonna go through that whole installation process for Windows. One other thing that you might need to take care of, once you do get it installed and everything is running, you're going to need an authorization code right here. You're gonna need a product pin code. You can get these on the internet very cheap. I paid like $25 US for mine, and that will allow you to basically have Windows. Now, if you're building a PC and you don't have all of that at the moment, you can go here and it's like, I don't have a product key, and you can continue building it, and it will have like a watermarked version of Windows on your PC to help you build it and get everything set up. But ultimately, you want to get that key. It's very cheap. Many of the PC videos that I was watching, or YouTube channels I was watching, they all had commercials. Oh, get your Windows key for 25% off, and get it for 15 bucks or get it for 20 bucks. And they were everywhere. So I saw the pattern. I was like, okay, I know I need that. So I had that, already had my pin. They emailed it to me and I got it right then and there. And then the next issue, I had my hard drives in there, and when I went to fire everything up, and once Windows got loaded, and I was like, yes, this is great. And I go to, let's see here, I go to custom Windows install, and then here are all the drives, the SSDs, the hard drives that I have in my system. Here was my USB boot drive that I was using to boot Windows off, and then here are all the SSDs. We've got the 4 terabyte, the 2 terabyte. I don't know what that was. I totally forgot. But you notice they all say unallotted space. Basically, we need to partition our hard drives, okay? So what I needed to do was figure out, like, I didn't know what drive was what. I couldn't recognize it because they didn't say 2 terabytes or 4 terabytes. So I was like, well, what drive is what? So again, a little bit of quick math here. I went, so 4 terabytes equals 4,000 gigabytes. So, okay, I knew that. That's what I knew what drive I wanted. I wanted the drive that had like 3,000 or 3,007 gigabytes. That was the 4 drive. So I installed my OS onto that biggest one, or for me, onto the fastest one, because I wanted it to be the speedy one. After that, Windows went in fine. And again, I'm installing Windows onto my quickest drive, not the biggest, sorry, my quickest drive. The 2 terabyte was my quickest drive. I wanted Windows to be on that. After that, Windows installed, it restarted, and immediately drivers automatically wanted to start updating. And then I had this issue, so I was like, okay, it was done. I fired a restart, and came back, and I was like, wait, where's all my drives? Here is the boot drive, the USB boot drive. All I see is my 2 terabyte hard drive. Where are my other drives, right? So then I was like, let me unplug this. Maybe it's because this is plugged in. No, that's all I have. We need to partition the drives. We need to let it know. So we'll go into here, and here it is. Here was my other 4 terabyte, but see how it's black and these have blue? I needed to set this up and partition it here. You can see here, they're not set up. So I went through that process, partitioning off the drives, and it's super easy. Just click on the button here. Windows, you can't mess it up, right? You know, new volume, set it, and then you can name it whatever you want. And make sure that's the right one. Yep, assign whatever letter you want it to be. You got all that stuff you can do. Name out your hard drive and all that stuff like that. And then boom, once it turns blue like that, you go back. Now I have my 2 drives. There's my 1 terabyte, my 2 terabyte for the Windows, and here's my 3.6. It should be, I don't know why it's not, it should be 4 terabytes, right? Not 3.63 terabytes, but who knows? That's it. That was pretty much it. Once we were here, I knew that was the system. Monitor refresh rates. My monitor's super old. 60 hertz is the max, but you will want to change that because it automatically defaults to 60 hertz. Changed my power settings to high performance so I can get the high performance out of everything. Updated my drivers for my GPU. And then after that, it was basically all software stuff. Just getting, software's back up, loading up my Photoshop and getting everything. And once I got to that point, now it's time to close it up and to peel off that plastic, guys. peel it off. I saved it for the end because that is the reward for putting it together. My first technically real built PC by myself, guys, me and YouTube, and you know, the 2 members in my community who helped me out through this whole process. And then I forgot to peel the inside plastic. Make sure you peel that off there too, right? Got that done. And there's the machine. It's low key. I like it, the stealth look. I'm glad I didn't go with the crazy RGB. That RGB light is part of the motherboard. And then I did a Cinestill or a Cinebench test, which you can download for free. And it basically, you can see where my GPU was ranking. It was ranking right up there in the top, close to the 4090. Boom, that was the specs of just doing a GPU run. And then I set up some other software, fan control, which allows me to, absolutely fantastic piece of software. It allows me to set up all the fans and control them with this one software. And I can set limits, like if the GPU gets this hot, I want these fans to kick on and push harder. Or if the CPU gets past this temperature, I want these fans to kick in and change. You can customize curves, you can customize, it's actually way better than the fan control system that comes with the motherboard. This fan control, definitely recommend. So from there, I started finding out what software I kind of needed to do like bench testing and stuff. I'll run that here so you guys, for all you techies who want to see that. Another channel I recommend, I watched this channel after everything was done, Jay's 2 cents. Definitely give his channel and watch this video, guys. Where is it? Right here, free programs that every PC should have, not sponsored. This video right here, free programs that every PC should have. And it's literally, that's where I found out about the Cinebench for, you know, checking out the GPU. That's where I found out about fan control. And that's where I also found out about a legitimate right here, Revo Uninstaller, that literally uninstalls a program and uninstalls everything with that program. All the little junk and admin stuff that it puts in the background, it takes out and cleans everything. A lot of free software. I found a cool RGB software that will control every single RGB element in your PC, all in just one software. Unfortunately, I only have that one little color spot in the back of my hard drive back there. That was it. That was the only thing that was RGB, and I can't change the colors of the actual GPU that they got going on there. But definitely take a look at that, and then also watch this. Never install these programs on your PC. Between these 2 videos, I was pretty much felt very solid and very clean with my system. So now what I'll do is get into some of the benchmarking stuff. And again, I'm going to use a software that was recommended by him for benchmarking your system and stress testing your machine. This is the software that I use right here, OCCT. I'm using the free version. And this was one of the first things I did after everything was up, was stress test the machine. Like this thing will let me know if there's something not right, if the memory's not reading right, CPU's over hot, or like it's got everything inside here that you would need to stress test a machine and to give you benchmarks. And every sensor on your machine, temperature sensor, it's got connected to it. You'll be able to see that. So when you come into this software here, right off the bat, it's got my chip right here, AMD. It's got temperatures, it's got the voltage, wattage, everything. It's got all that stuff going in. And this little thing here about the cores, it's really cool, right? Memory, the percent of the memory, and then it's got the GPU. You see my GPU is running really cool right now. Again, I can go to stability test, and I went through everything here and did a stability test. And you can test it like literally for, like, you can set the time if you want to do it for 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's up to you. And then you got here your benchmarking, which I did benchmarking before. You can do it on your CPU, your memory, your legacy, all that stuff. You go into monitoring, look at all this stuff, guys. Like half of this stuff, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but you know, it's there. You got temperatures on all your cores, everything, right? So if you're hardcore techie, you like all of this stuff, like, I mean, it's all here for you. Any sensor that's on my CPU, it's got it. It's got it covered, right? I mean, temperatures for days and all kinds of stuff here. There it is, right? Voltage, CPUs, fans, chassis fans, everything, right? So that's all there. And then it's got my system info and other things that you can do with it. But this thing is pretty fantastic. For example, I'll go here and benchmark the CPU and go ahead and do that. You'll just go, you got to wait. On the free version, you have to wait 10 seconds before it actually starts. If you don't want to wait 10 seconds, go ahead and give them some support on the Patreon, right?
So I'm gonna go ahead and fire that up and let it go. And one thing that's nice about it too, like if it hangs up somewhere, you'll see where it will start to hang up. So if this thing is moving freely, you know your
test schedule is complete.
It's already finished, right? It's already finished. No errors detected. Took about 10 seconds. And then, you know, it gives you your benchmark. Where do I see the results at? Go hit the back button here. So here it is. I'm running right about here, AMD 79X3D. Here are some of the best scores. I don't know why they're higher than mine. I don't know. Like, I don't have this thing like overclocked and all that stuff. I don't know. Same hardware as mine. References my score. My score right there was a 194. Here's a 199, and here's a 2. Wow, like why is that machine better? That's it, guys. That's my whole PC build for Blender. Now, again, if I jump into Blender, everybody's gonna be asking me which is faster, Octane or Cycles. They both are quick. They both are quick. Now, this scene is not really giving any justification, but I mean, I will say just from playing around between Cycles and Octane, Octane viewport is way more snappier. Like, see, like it's like whoop, whoop, whoop. I notice when I'm in Cycles, it's like whoop, whoop, whoop. It's like a pause and then it goes to full. This thing is like, as soon as I let go, it's like shoot, shoot. Right? So I did release a video in my community of a file that's set up to compare Octane versus Cycles. Everything is set up. I just need to make that video. I shared that file with the community so that everybody can play with it in there. And it was it's fascinating to see the difference. Now, there also was a difference when we went to HDRIs. Some of the HDRIs and Cycles, the background look, the color was washy and washed out. It looked like it was slightly desaturated versus Octane, where the colors were like, they had way more pop than they did in Cycles, which was interesting. And as far as like some of the, what I would say, dynamic range, it seemed like we had a little bit more dynamic range in Octane than we did with Cycles. And that was just looking through the HDRI background. So I don't know. But anyways, guys, enough of my jibber jabber. That was a pretty long video. That was my journey on building this machine. You know, lots of stuff is going to be coming here. I'm going to be pumping out a lot more things. Basically, literally 3 videos a week. That was part of my deal with the grant with OTOY for helping me get this machine up and going. I want to give big shout outs to the 2 people who they know who they are for helping me and on this journey. I want to give another shout out to Ralph, who also kind of threw it out there before anybody offered. He was like, hey, you should ask OTOY about sponsoring you for something. Like, that was like the first initial thought. And I was like, and literally 2 days after that, I had 2 more people reach out to me in my community like, yeah, you should ask OTOY. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It was kind of like the force was strong with this Jedi, right? It was like it was a true Jedi moment. If you guys are not members of the community, take a look, because we're pushing it. We're Blender Octaners, right? We're the dark side of the cube. We're on the back side of the cube that nobody sees. And it's a small, tight-knit community. And I'm trying to build possibly one of the biggest Blender Octane communities on the internet. And everybody just loves it because we love Octane. And that's why we're here. Link will be down in the description if you guys are interested in that. If not, I got a Discord down there. I'm going to start building up the Discord for people who can't afford or don't want to be into the community. But there's a lot of perks being in the community. We're swapping files. We're helping each other with problems. We're building a material database, material library. We're trying to start working on add-ons that we can like convert add-ons to work with Octane, because everything only works with Cycles. So lots of good stuff happening, community challenges and things like that.